Well, hello everybody and welcome to Jeff's Baking Blog. Today I'm going to be making something which I saw a couple of days ago in The Guardian, a recipe by Rachel Roddy, and it's for rice pudding tarts. So this is a tart case, pastry case, and into it goes some rice pudding and then it's baked in the oven until it sets foam. It sounds very interesting, and I do love rice pudding, so I thought I'd give these a try. I put a link on my blog to the original recipe in The Guardian so that you can check on that as well if you want to. So it's actually quite simple, but it takes a little bit of time, as these things do. I'll go straight on to the ingredients. And for the pastry I have 125 grams, which is 9 tablespoons of butter, which is cold, and I've cut that into cubes. Then I have 250 grams, which is 1 2/3 cups. That's based on scooping packed flour into a 250 milliliter cup, and that's plain flour. I have 2 medium egg yolks, which would be large in the USA, 75 grams, which is 3/4 of a cup plus 2 teaspoons of icing sugar, the zest from 1 lemon, and a pinch of salt. And then for the rice pudding, I have 500 millilitres, which is 2 cups of whole milk. I think you could probably use semi-skimmed if you wanted to. Then I have 100 grams, which is half a cup of caster sugar. You could use granulated sugar. I have 3/4 of a cup, which is 150 grams of short grain rice, or arborio rice, pudding rice basically. I have 1 medium egg, which would be large in the USA. I have the zest from 1 orange and the zest from 1 lemon there, and I have a pinch of salt again. And in addition, and this is optional, I have 50 millilitres of dessert wine. Mine is a Sauterne, but Rachel Roddy suggests Vinsanto, which I couldn't get, and I wouldn't have bought anyway, because when I saw the price it was about £24 for a small bottle. But it's optional. You don't need to put the wine in if you don't want to. It will mean cooking a little bit longer until the liquid absorbs, but it will actually add a very nice flavour. And a dessert wine is a sweet wine, so I'm using this Sauterne. So I put the rice pudding ingredients to one side for a moment while we go on to make the pastry, and I'm going to do this in my the bowl of my immersion blender, as I often do with these things. And I'm going to put the salt and the icing sugar into the flour first of all, and I'm just going to give those a little stir around. It doesn't really matter because it will get mixed up in the immersion blender. And then I'm going to put that into my blender. And I'm going to add the zest as well from the lemon. And then I'm going to put the butter in. And I'm just going to toss the butter before I start, just a little bit, so that it gets coated in some of the flour, just like that. And then I'm going to process this, pulse it basically, repeatedly, until the mixture becomes like coarse grain or fine breadcrumbs. So that looks quite good. And what I'm going to do now is put in my egg yolks. And I'm going to mix it again until it just begins to come together. And that's just beginning to come together, I can see that. So I'm actually going to tip that into a bowl. You could tip it onto the counter, but I'm going to tip it into a bowl. And then I'm going to use my hands to form it into one piece of dough. So I'm just going to squeeze that as you can see, it easily forms into a dough. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put that into some plastic wrap, and I'm going to chill it for at least an hour. So I formed it into a bit of a disc. And I'm going to put that in the fridge and chill it for an hour. And while it's chilling, we'll go on and we'll make the rice pudding. The first thing to say is I forgot to mention I have 2 tablespoons of butter for the rice pudding as well. So that's in the ingredients. So I'll put that into a saucepan, and I'm going to put that onto a heat and melt it. And once it's melted, I'm going to stir in the rice and get the rice coated in the melted butter. So that's just about melted, so I'll put the rice in and stir that around. That's good, and then I'm going to add in my dessert wine. And my pinch of salt. And I'm just going to leave that until the wine starts to boil. I can see that boiling now. So I'm then going to add in my sugar and my milk. And I'm going to stir that around, and I'm going to bring that to the boil, and once it's come to the boil I'm going to simmer that, stirring it quite frequently until the mixture has mostly been absorbed into the rice and I have a nice thick creamy rice pudding. So as you can see, that's now started to boil, so I'm going to turn it down until it's just simmering. And then I will stir it quite frequently, but not constantly, until the liquid starts to be fully absorbed into the rice and I have a nice creamy pudding. So as you can see, the rice has absorbed most of the liquid and it's nice and thick and creamy. And I've actually tested the grains of rice to make sure that they're soft, and they are. So I'm going to set that to one side and allow it to cool down while we roll out the pastry. I am preheating my oven now to 180 Celsius, that's 160 Celsius with a fan, 350 Fahrenheit, and I have greased basically a bun tin or a jam tart tin like this. You could use a muffin tin if you don't have one of these, but you don't want to fill the muffin tin with pastry all the way up. So I've greased that and that's ready. So what I'm going to do is roll out the pastry, and I've broken it in half, and I'm going to do half first. And I want to roll this to a thickness of about 3 millimeters, which is roughly 1/8 of an inch. And that's good enough like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut out some rounds, and I've got a cookie cutter here which is almost 9 centimeters, almost 4 inches. It may be too big. I'll test it with one. So I'll cut one out, and I'm going to use a scalloped edge like that, and I'm going to put that into my tin, and that's about right. So I'll do the remainder. And with the pastry rolled out like that, I have some left over, so if I have more rice I can make a few more. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take some parchment paper and I'm going to put it into each one, and I'm going to fill that with some baking beans, just like that. And with the pastry filled with the baking beans like that, I'm going to put them into the oven, and I'm going to bake them for 20 minutes. Then I'll take them out of the oven, remove the beans and the parchment paper, and allow them to cool a little bit, and then I'll come back and we'll finish off the rice mixture, put it into the cases, and we'll bake them. And at that time I will reduce my oven to 170 Celsius, 150 Celsius with a fan, 340 Fahrenheit. So the rice pudding has cooled down quite a lot, and I've taken the pastry cases out of the oven. I actually broke one as I was removing the beans, but so they've blind baked quite nicely. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put my zest, orange and lemon zest that is, into the rice with the egg, and I'm going to mix that to get it all combined. I just need to get a bit from the bottom there so that gets mixed in as well. Just like that, and then I'm going to spoon that into the pastry cases. And with those filled, I'm going to put those back into the oven at that reduced temperature, 170 Celsius, 150 Celsius with a fan, 340 Fahrenheit. And I'm going to bake them for about 12 minutes until the rice has firmed up. Then I'll take them out, allow them to cool down a little bit, and I'll come back and show you the results. So I baked the rice pudding tarts with the filling in for about 12 minutes. I took them out of the oven and I've allowed them to cool down a little bit, so they're still actually slightly warm, and I think you can eat these warm or you can eat them cold. So this is what they look like right now, and I'll have a taste of one. Has a lovely crisp pastry and a creamy rice pudding with that citrus flavour coming through as well. Nice and creamy, and just the right amount of sweetness to it. I think the dessert wine probably adds to the flavour as well, but I definitely taste the zest of the orange and the lemon coming through. So that's going to be it for this recipe. I hope you've enjoyed it, and if you have, please give me the thumbs up below the video and click to subscribe to my YouTube channel. In the top right hand corner of the screen there will be an eye that you can click on, and that will take you to a link for the recipe, and I'll put a link below the video as well, and I'll be back with another recipe in the very near future. So until then, happy baking.